Admiral James Stone said. 3 artificial suns shone in the Galactic Council's Grand Chamber. With his grizzled hands clutching the polished metal, he stood at the human delegation's podium after 20 years of military duty. Hadn't prepared him for the scene where hundreds of extraterrestrial representatives sat in tiers above him. The principal members of the Alliance are seated in the shadows, their faces obscured. Highest seats, a role that Stone has consistently maintained for more than 10,000 years. Although the architecture of the chambers was intended to make smaller species feel insignificant, today it proved effective, and the coalition has reached. The main speaker's voice boomed through the room as it proclaimed its decision. Are cutting off all military assistance to Earth and the stones of the Sol system. The comments struck him like physical blows as his hold tightened, but he maintained his face. Now that Earth is 3 months distant, the officer's neutrality, a talent acquired from years of playing poker, came in useful. Despite the rage blazing in his eyes, Stone's voice remained calm as he spoke. Our defense strategies were developed with the assistance of the coalition, which provided millions of. If the final decision is stopped by another council member, lives might be at stake. Earth is doomed since the swarm's march cannot be halted. Stone glanced up at the group of extraterrestrials were the same creatures that had greeted humanity in the galactic community 15 years before. Those who had extolled human adaptability and bravery were now departing Earth to perish, so let the record reveal. Stone said that every word is a sword that humanity will remember on this day. Recall who stood next to us and who spoke something that echoed across the room. Representatives moved uneasily in their chairs, and Stone resisted, allowing them to. The head speaker replied in a tone that was almost compassionate. You feel ashamed that your species is young. Comprehend that no civilization has ever endured direct contact with the swarm. Stone's message echoed the need for the coalition to protect its resources. The swarm will continue to go through the concealing chamber and not halt at Earth. Admiral Stone, you're only buying time. A new voice yelled out the sea. Since the coalition's centuries-long battle against the swarm, hundreds of worlds have been lost. The arithmetic of survival shows that your planet's population seldom exceeds 10 billion. Gasps reverberated throughout the room as Stone yelled, "Go to hell with your maths." Such outbursts were regarded as. Stone stopped caring at council sessions because he was uncivilized and had never experienced humanity. When the chips are down, we need to fight, and we don't need your maths. The head speaker lifted its appendage and called for order, saying that this gathering is for allies who will not break their commitments. Coalition troops will start withdrawing right now. May your species discover tranquilly in its latter days. Stone spruced up his clothes and took along. His subsequent remarks would either be seen as the epitome of humanity or the start of a new chapter when the swarm breaches Earth's defenses. He continued, his voice traveling to every nook and cranny of the room. When humanity demonstrates our ability to do what your coalition is unable to recall at this time. Recalling that you decided to move aside, he turned and left the room, his footsteps resonating in the abrupt. The council representatives watched him go in quiet, many of them wondering whether they had just seen the last person they'd. General Rivers' visage was ever seen when Stone turned on his quantum communicator in his private room. Stone remarked simply as her attitude changed, "They're leaving us." Rivers gave the orbiting platforms a slow nod, saying they would be rigorous in the. After a week of being alone, it's time for Phoenix procedure, according to Rivers. Refusing to play by their rules anymore, Stone gazed out the window at the swarm was approaching, but humanity wasn't in the gleaming expanse of the Coalition's capital, world somewhere out there. Sending the news to Earth that the Stone Order is fulfilled while silently waiting for death. Mobilization. We will demonstrate to the Coalition how humanity conducts war as is quantum if they refuse to assist us in combating the swarm. The Coalition's communicator turned to a black stone and smiled grimly. Believed that humanity was going to perish, but they were going to see something. The last days of peace were coming to an end because of an extraordinary species that refused to die. Colonel Maria West stood in front of the United Defense Department's huge window as the moment for fire and fury was about to start. Command Center seeing each departing Coalition ship disappear into hyperspace. The ship left a short burst of blue light that resembled stars leaving one by one. Once buzzing with extraterrestrial technology, orbital defense stations now sank to the bottom. Lieutenant Adams reported that the last of them was silent over Earth. Maria, they didn't even give us the maintenance instructions for his monitoring station. The command center was bustling with activity as cops looked away from the window. Real-time data from all throughout the solar system was shown on the screens of the analyst stations, and the atmosphere was. "Show me the latest defense map," she commanded a hologram. She is anxious but concentrated. Emerged in the middle of the chamber, with Earth suspended there and encircled by many defense posts. Layers now displayed red markings where Coalition soldiers have departed the swarm. Would arrive in less than 3 months, General Rivers stated as he entered the chamber. Admiral Stone's letter on the Coalition's abandonment had just come, and her crumpled uniform suggested she hadn't slept. "Is official," Maria bitterly nodded, and we proceeded as we pleased, with no more limitations. Rivers approached the hologram and sought to ensure there was no more alien supervision. New icons for a number of buttons that displayed Earth's remaining military. The Coalition has 8,000 ships, mostly tiny fighters and corvettes. We have our own projects, but they never trusted us with their larger boats, Maria replied, giving herself a slight. Rivers' grin resembled her look in the Phoenix project, which we kept secret. Began constructing the ships as soon as we heard about the swarm. The Coalition would have criticized it for being costly and archaic, but they have now left. Are they the hologram change? Demonstrating how civilian and big cargo ships are being transformed into weapons platforms, something the Coalition didn't. Recognized that when it came to survival, humanity had the ability to convert everything into a weapon. But what about the... Dr. Walker informed Maria that the lunar base's Project Prometheus is 60% complete. Finalization without Coalition limitations, allowing us to use our whole AI capabilities. They were always concerned about the potential consequences of combining our artificial intelligence with their. Maria said that a young cop hurried to tell them about quantum technology. Colonel General, you must observe this deeply. He entered the room with a tablet. Recently, space sensors detected a change in the hologram, revealing a red mass at the solar system's boundary. It is impossible, Lieutenant. Dots look to be traveling gradually towards Earth. Adams muttered that it would take 3 months for the swarm to arrive. Rivers said quickly, "The coalition knew that's why they left." Maria moved swiftly closer to the hologram, observing the oncoming adversary. How long did the room remain quiet for 4 weeks at their present pace? Maria instructed her to transmit the alarm, but the coalition had provided them with much less time than they had anticipated, instead of 3 months. All personnel at battle stations start the subterranean evacuation of civilians when a voice breaks the stillness. Shelters launch all of our flying ships, but what about Project Phoenix? Rivers inquired. The ships aren't fully tested. Maria had no other option, so she turned to confront the cops in the room and pay attention to what the coalition believes they've declared us dead, believing that humanity would perish like every other species confronting the swarm, yet they don't understand us. They have no idea what people do. She gestured towards the hologram where the red. The swarm's bulk increased every minute as each spacecraft was turned into a weapon. Every man and woman turns into a soldier, and the station turns into a fortress. A chamber filled with activity officers said, "Humanity's last line of defense, and we will not fall." Commands were sent, they hurried to their positions, and humanity's war machine started to motion. Rivers took a step forward. "The odds are stacked against you, Maria, and they always were," said, seeing the launch of the first wave of Earth's cruisers, "but humanity believes in overcoming obstacles rather than in unfathomable odds." Project Phoenix brought Earth's last defenses to life with enormous powerful. Deadly emerged from secret shipyards on the moon, continuing the Prometheus project. The swarm was approaching early in the countdown to completion, but humanity was prepared. The true battle was about to start, and Captain Robert Thompson was going to demonstrate to the galaxy what it meant to fight without limitations. Saw the first wave of the swarm emerge from faster-than-light travel from the bridge of the destroyer Iron Will. The stars were obscured by their dark, twisted spacecraft, which resembled enormous insects. His sensor officer shouted out that there were 8,000 enemy warships behind them. Robert got up from his command chair and surrounded himself with his staff, who were working at their stations with grim resolve, serving as fleet humanity's outer defense. He gave the order for all ships to take fighting positions in the first line against the approaching storm. Recall that 500 human vessels dispersed along the defense line heard the remarks. "Your training, keep in mind what we're fighting for," and the swarm ships advanced towards their ideal configuration. They were heartless and had overrun many civilizations in this manner. The enemy is getting inside the tactical officer's effective weapon range due to their overwhelming numbers and coordinated strikes. Said that they never even attempt to converse, Robert added. He inhaled deeply and started the Phoenix procedure. All ships follow Pattern Alpha. Humanity's first surprise for the swarm hundreds of civilian cargo would be what transpired next. Suddenly, ships that were refitted with few crews and loaded with explosives. These enormous ships were fired up and pushed ahead after drifting darkly and looking dead to hostile sensors. The swarm is designed to combat conventional military warships, and its engines are blazing hot. Paused at a critical time while the tactical officer was accelerated by Phoenix ships. 30 seconds after the collision was declared, the swarm swiftly recovered and turned their guns. on the incoming cargo ships, but they weren't the simple pickings. Each Phoenix ship seemed to be carrying just. Crews had volunteered for what they knew was a one-way expedition, and there was sufficient personnel to execute evasive maneuvers. The first Phoenix spacecraft collided with a swarm vessel, sending a scream for Earth across the communication lines. Like a new sun, the explosion illuminated space, and more collisions came after. The Phoenix ship has enough explosive power to take down many swarm ships. The enemy formation was flawless just before it started to disintegrate the main fleet. Target was instructed by Advanced Robert to teach them how to fix the disrupted areas. With their researched weaponry blazing, humanity battles the human vessel. Despite learning their patterns from the Coalition's briefings on swarm tactics, the Coalition battled with accuracy and humanity battled with restrained rage, sir. His sensor officer yelled. The swarm is altering their structure and adjusting. Robert grinned grimly and launched. This time the combat, the second wave of Phoenix ships uses various approaches and vectors. As the swarm surged throughout space, its superior numbers were apparent, yet they were. As they attempted to adjust, their flawless formations kept shattering, costing them a price they had never paid before. Because to humanity's suicide tactics, 30% of our fleet has lost tactical officers. Reported, but the enemy has lost 45% of their ships, the most they have ever lost. Robert held onto his chair during the first encounter as the iron trembled from a near miss, and he continued to pound them. They reassemble and demonstrate to them what occurs when they pose a danger to our house and the surrounding area. They had turned into a cemetery of wrecked ships, both swarm and human, but where? Every human death was lamented, but the swarm just continued arriving without showing any emotion. Constantly detecting fresh signals, sir, the sensor officer yelled out further swarm. Ships departing from FTL. Robert saw a group of hostile ships arrive. Even though they anticipated this, the sight remained intimidating. Send the signal to Earth that the enemy forces had arrived and that the phase had begun. Robert considered what the Coalition would say if they could see him as his ship pivoted to confront the new danger. They had anticipated a swift and tidy fall of humanity in this conflict, but instead the swarm was learning how to deal with an adversary that would use every tactic, sacrifice, and last resort. The remaining ships he broadcast resorted to secondary defense in order to survive. Lure them in, then let's demonstrate the other things we have planned for them. Although the fight for Earth was far from ended, humanity had already made progress. Deep under the lunar surface, Dr. Alice, they had caused the swarm to bleed in a way never seen before, and they were only just getting started. As Walker examined the mass cry in front of her, she dabbed at her perspiration. Around her, Project Prometheus buzzed, combining stolen Coalition technology with human ingenuity to have caused nightmares for their erstwhile pals. According to her aide Tom, integration is 95%. Alice nodded while observing the streams of data. The quantum core is steady. We have never raised the power levels this high before. Streamed through kilometers of moon rock above them, over her screens, the great. While the largest space conflict in human history was going on, humanity's real response to when the swarm was almost ready, she inquired as to how long it would take for it to penetrate our outer defenses at the present pace. Tom responded after more than 6 hours that Captain Thompson's fleet is gradually regaining its strength, forcing them to pay for everything. Kilometer, but Alice touched the main console since there are just too many of them. Sensing the minor power tremor passing through the systems that humanity had always been prohibited by the Coalition, they said it was too risky to combine quantum technology with artificial intelligence. Unpredictable, they began the last scene as she commanded Adam to wake up. As electricity was transferred to the center chamber behind thick walls of transparent steel, the lights in the room became dimmer. The greatest secret known to man, an AI system, was the quantum processor that started to glow. That was capable of thinking in quantum levels, anticipating and responding to events before they occurred. Adam posted on the internet, "Hello, Dr. Walker. The swarm has come early." A soothing voice entered the room. "Yes," Alice said, "we need you fully, without any limitations." Adam said that the safety procedures of the Coalition were restricting. Tom seemed anxious as we computed 47 methods to enhance our armament systems that they would have found unsettling. Alice reminded him that the Coalition isn't present because they are certain that this technology was forbidden for a reason. "We do things our way now that they abandoned us to die," she said, pressing her fingers against the scanner that gives them complete system access surrounding their concealed weapon platforms. Started to light up throughout the lunar surface. These weren't the basic defense stations that the Coalition had provided. According to Adam, they were something fresh from Quantum Targeting Matrix Online. They are predictable because of their hive intelligence, which calculates likely swarm moves. They act as one, think as one, and will pass away as one. Alice saw each weapon platform that aligned itself included a tiny replica of Adam's quantum processor, which allowed them to. "Dr. Walker, in order to coordinate in ways that shouldn't have been feasible," a voice called. "Sector 7 has been breached by the swarm via the emergency channel, and there." Perfect, Alice whispered softly, "They're right," as they advanced on the lunar defense line. She went to the main screen, where the conflict between the swarm ships was shown in real time, and pointed to where we wanted them. Moving in their customary, flawless formation, anticipating the same opposition they had usually encountered from Adam, she ordered them to exhibit. Prometheus the Quantum is the protocol that demonstrates what humanity is capable of. Weapon platforms latched upon their targets as processors buzzed with blue light, and then an impossibility. Before firing their guns, the swarm ships started to detonate. Energy weapons overwhelmed the Quantum, and missiles exploded in their tubes. According to all known physics, processors were anticipating their activities and countering them before they occurred, therefore this shouldn't be. Alice said, "They were so afraid," as Tom muttered, watching the destruction the Coalition fought too small. Of potential problems, they failed to see what would occur just above them. The swarm's flawless arrangement had turned into a trap as the combat progressed. Adam's synchronized motions were often predictable due to their power. Adam reported that the main swarm fleet is withdrawing due to quantum computations. Trying to change their strategy, but I'm doing it more quickly, thanks to Alice's permission. She smiled slightly since this was just the start of the endeavor. Prometheus wasn't only humanity's proclamation of independence from the Coalition's restrictions was a weapon. Spread the message. she instructed the command to inform them that Project Prometheus is operating. Humanity is prepared to demonstrate to the galaxy our true capabilities, as shown by the quantum computer's quicker light pulses. The swarm was going to discover that humanity's most powerful weapons were reaching through the lunar rock like artificial stars. Weren't there bombs or ships? Rather, General Michael Drake stood for their readiness to accomplish the unthinkable. Hundreds of screens are watching the biggest fight in human history unfold in Earth's orbiting command center. Depicted various areas of the battle, with the whole solar system projected in the center of a huge hologram. His communications officer reported that coalition surveillance ships were seen near the system's boundary and were keeping an eye on. Drake remarked icily, "Sir, let them see what they abandon the swarms." With more than 20,000 ships in the main fleet, they had anticipated finding A. Instead, they discovered humanity waiting with the previous wave's crippled and shattered opponent. Project Prometheus is online in every area, demonstrating its full power. The tactical officer said that Dr. Walker reports that every system is operating at full capacity. With his gaze riveted on the hologram, Drake nodded and sent the all-ships signal. Carry out Operation Thunderstrike. The sight that prompted the coalition observers to verify their sensors signaled the start of the conflict. Incredulously, human spacecraft unexpectedly emerged from behind planets and asteroids hit by impossibly. With accuracy, the quantum AI network foresaw and stopped each swarm movement before it occurred. The swarm is. In an effort to adjust, the tactical commanders said that they are dividing into smaller organizations attempting to trick our targeting algorithms. Adam has already determined this. Drake responded by mentioning the quantum spring that conceals the trap. Each of the missiles that were placed in debris fields weeks ago was ignited and carried A. The swarm was surrounded by weapons that were aware of their quantum processor, which was connected to the main network. Prior to their actions, "Sir," the sensor officer's voice was full of. Nevertheless, the swarm's hive consciousness is unable to adjust, and they are losing formation cohesiveness. Drake saw as the flawless swarm forms that were feared around the galaxy collapsed, moving too quickly for our quantum projections. Their unity had always been their strength, but against an opponent, it had descended into anarchy. That could detect movements beforehand, unity turned into a vulnerability. Coalition ships are getting closer. Communications said that they are asking for authorization to watch. Drake gave the command, "I want them to see this clearly, from a closer position. Demonstrate to them what they could have had if they had joined us as the conflict went on, despite the fact that human ships were outnumbered." Project Prometheus, which was hit with deadly impact, learned from the swarm's movements in addition to predicting them. Adapted more quickly than the 40% enemy losses their swarm consciousness could understand. 60% of the swarm attempted to flee after the tactical announcement, but humanity had. Quantum-guided weaponry were used to mine jump sites in preparation for this as well. Routes turned into death zones, "Sir." Communications said, They're questioning how this is feasible after getting transmissions from the coalition ships there. Drake grinned glumly. "Tell them that when you put humanity in a difficult situation, this is what occurs. Tell them that we did what they were scared to attempt." The hologram depicted the death throes of the swarm fleet, with ships colliding with one another as their synchronized movement failed. When confronted with an opponent that it was unable to foresee or comprehend, the hive mind started to fear when the flagship saw tactical reports that they were trying to arrange a last strike, but not today. Drake said that Adam would carry out the final phase. Every human weapon in the system fired simultaneously, synchronized with unimaginable precision, thanks to quantum network pulses. The Swarm flagship and its accompanying fleet disappeared in a burst of light that outshined the light for a while. The enemy fleet is in full retreat. Trembling with emotion, those who are still able to flee are escaping the system. The command center exploded in celebration. "Sir, but we've really won." Drake continued to watch the Coalition watchers who had come to see the last stand of humanity, but instead they had witnessed a first. The Swarm's first significant loss sent a message to everyone. The solar system is safe thanks to his orders, but this isn't over. The Swarm will come back, and we'll be prepared. Humanity isn't simply protecting. His voice suddenly carried over the jubilation as he turned to face his team. "We resist them and let the galaxy see what happens when you put humanity in a difficult situation. We are no longer the prey. Now that we are the hunters." Commander Lisa Parker was standing on the bridge of the newest flagship from Vengeance Earth as her 3 months after humanity's triumph in the Sol system, the fleet was ready to enter the Swarm territory. They were now fighting the enemy, and every ship was ready to report. Lisa nodded as the executive officer said that Project Prometheus is integrated across the combat force, glancing at the holographic display showcasing her fleet of 100 quantum-powered battleships. 3 months ago, this would have seemed to be connected to Adam's network and processors. Unthinkable, humanity's spear was now pointed towards the Swarm heart, sending the last communication to Earth Command. She gave the order to begin the revenge operation. As the fleet approached Swarm space, reality twisted around them. The Swarm had turned a system that the Coalition had lost decades before into one of its hives. Serves as a staging area for their never-ending, multi-enemy. Contact sensors alerted them that their ships were still in the area and they weren't expecting us. Doc Lisa gave herself permission to grin icily when launch attack teams demonstrated to them how humanity attacks. The conflict started in a different way than any other the Swarm had seen before human ships formed the defense lines they were used to seeing. Instead, they each launched an assault using many different vectors. Hostile ships are launching, and the ship's quantum sight anticipates and blocks Swarm reactions before they happen. Adam's forecasts were accurate, but they're dispersed and disorganized. Before using the new weaponry, Lisa had never had to protect their own area. Ordered us to demonstrate to them what Dr. Walker has been working on from the hangars of the human fleet. Little drones appeared, each with a tiny quantum processor that allowed. They plunged into the throng, allowing them to think and act more quickly than any pilot alive. Coalition monitoring ships seen at the scene of launching Swarm ships spreading mayhem. Of course, they're keeping an eye on Lisa, who said that they want to see whether our win at the edge of the system communications. Earth was a fluke to show them that the fight didn't go as planned. Human spacecraft had never engaged in combat in the galaxy using a mix of tactical accuracy and savage fury, which the Swarm's collective consciousness was unable to match in combat. Defensive opponents were unable to adjust to a foe who seemed to be aware of every move they made. Lisa, the first hive cluster is revealed tactically, and defenses are down. As she sat up upright in her command chair, they finally got to fire the Prometheus rocket's unique weapons created underground streak in the direction of the swarms. Orbital structures, each missile contained a payload intended to cause disruption rather than destruction. The explosions were unlike anything they had ever seen in the swarm's hive consciousness itself. Physical structures and mental ties were torn apart by quantum energy that rippled across space. That held the swarm together. Their cooperation is disintegrating sensors, and the hive mind is believed to be. Lisa saw the powerful swarm terror of the galaxy fragmenting in this region. Started to disintegrate, their superior numbers were meaningless without their unity. Sir Communications criticized humanity's quantum-enhanced fleet, saying they're asking for permission to deploy military observers after receiving transmissions from the coalition ships. Lisa strongly said that they had their opportunity to stand when our next procedure was disallowed. They decided to run alongside us, allowing them to observe from a distance while humanity performs what they. The swarm ships that were still able to fly were unable to conclude the combat. Their flawless formation broke the hive cluster as they fled in chaos. Sent a message to Earth. Lisa, after a symbol of their unstoppable growth burnt. Once the retaliation phase of the first phase of operation is over, the swarm they may be beaten and harmed, and they now understand what it's like to be pursued. Plotted an ACC route to the next target the swarm believed they had, turning to her crew and seeing the intense pride in their eyes. Instead of frightening humanity into servitude, something has woken them up. They don't comprehend a species that is as incapable of surrendering as she is. As the fleet prepared for their next assault, Lisa reflected on how rapidly things had changed in the galaxy 3 months before. Having dismissed humanity as hopeless, they now stood in startled silence as the primitive species started methodically eliminating the worst danger the galaxy has ever faced. Humanity was only beginning, and the chase was on, and James Stone stood in the Galactic Council room precisely where he had been 6 months before, but everything else had changed. Instead of requesting assistance, he was announcing. He declared to the group that the primary hive cluster of the swarm had been found. Humanity's united fleet of gathered alien representatives will launch an assault within the hour. I'm not here to ask help. I'm here to tell you that the room that was formerly inhabited by the whispers of humanity's doom was. The coalition members sat rigidly in their high chairs, dead silence, observing the person who had shown them all to be mistaken. At these locations, spacecraft have assembled. Stone kept showing a hologram of. After millennia of conflict, you never discovered the swarm's home on the target system. Our quantum AI network found it in less than 2 months, and the head speaker stirred. Uncomfortably, Admiral Stone, you must not intend to stop this Stone interruption, right? The coalition spent ages fleeing the swarm, while humanity spent 6 months doing precisely what we're preparing. He pushed a button to hunt them down, and the hologram displayed the Earth's fleet. Each of the 500 warships was more sophisticated than any the coalition had ever constructed. Beyond their wildest dreams, Project Prometheus had developed weaponry that could anticipate and counter. Commander Parker's fleet has previously confronted the outside world using any swarm technique. Defenses according to Stone, the swarms were trying to organize a defense, but the displays in the council room illuminated, revealing the hive mind's inability to adjust quickly enough to our quantum predictions. Coalition representatives stared in disbelief as humanity's ships ripped across the battlefield in real time. Someone murmured, "It's impossible that the swarm's defenses are made of paper." Reported that the home system of the swarm was meant to be invincible. Stone gave us a chilly grin and said, "The coalition told us that we couldn't survive." Humanity ceased thinking that it was impossible to fight back the day you left us, yet the struggle went on. The swarm battled valiantly on the screens, but they were up against an adversary they couldn't comprehend or foresee that every strategy they had developed over millennia would be revealed before they could be used. Dr. Walker reports that Adam's last weapon is prepared, sir. Stone nodded and returned his attention to the 99% likelihood of success that he had estimated. Council, what you're going to see is the swarm's demise, not via flight. Away by direct confrontation rather than concealment, the screen displayed a enormous instrument that emerged from the human fleet. It was the final product of Project Prometheus, a weapon intended to use Stone's additional gazing to turn the hive consciousness of the swarm against itself. This is also the official withdrawal of humanity from the Coalition's defense, as stated by the Coalition leadership. We've learned from treaties that we can't depend on partners who flee when difficulty arises. The weapon triggered the pulse of quantum energy that was visible even through the council screens as it rippled across space. The hive mind is failing as the swarm ships started to disperse, their synchronized actions turning into chaos. According to his aide, their whole network is disintegrating as a result of the weapon's operation. Stone saw the powerful swarm terror of the galaxy starting to demolish itself. Stations erupted as ships opened fire on one another, and the flawless unity that had made them unstoppable turned into their. Stone told the quiet room, "Let this be a lesson for your downfall. Threats are not accepted by humanity, and we never give up or desert our allies, but we've learned the hard way that some people lose the war." Abruptly, the swarm, the entity that has frightened the galaxy for centuries, ceased to exist, and the remains of their empire drifted in its stead. The Coalition receives greetings from the fleet Earth, the victorious ships of humanity. "Turn to go," Stone remarked. "We'll be forming our own alliance now with those who know what loyalty is, and everyone who wants to join us is welcome to apply," he said as he left. The chamber left behind a council that came to the realization that they had abandoned humanity too late. Instead of attempting to preserve themselves, they liberated humanity to become something. Not only are they survivors, but they are also conquerors, and they are avengers of the era. Humanity's age was only starting, and the scission was coming to a close.